Enslaved Africans in Irvington Committee, and we're doing a lot of work there. We are working towards commemorating the history of slavery in our village with public art prominently placed on Main Street to acknowledge the history of slavery right in Irvington. And we are also right now working with Kelly, and we're going to be creating a memorial space right in Irvington to acknowledge the enslaved African burial ground. One of the most poignant and heart-wrenching parts of these critical rallies is saying out loud the names of the people who have been murdered at the hands of police officers. It's always wrenching to take a minute to mourn the real human being who lived and walked in those shoes. I'm going to say some other names to you now. Caesar, Diamond, Flip, Tom, Sue, Abigail, Dinah, Hannah, Betty, Dick, David, Team, Brebe, Bill, Jack, Susanna. These are just some of the enslaved men, women, and children who labored right here between Phillipsburg Manor and Irvington. We say their names. This is a quote by an enslaved man named Dave. He was a poet and a potter. Master says, Dave, that suits you. That's your name. He can call me whatever he pleases. Tom, or John, or Will, or Dave. No matter. I had another name once. I can't recall the sound of it, but I hear it whispered slowly and quietly in the still of night into my ear. And then it was gone. New York was the capital of American slavery for over 200 years. Right. All of the land between Croton and the Bronx was owned by the Phillips family. By the mid-18th century, 150 European tenant farmers settled on this land and paid rent to the Phillips family. And just about 50% of all of these households owned enslaved people. In these tight-knit communities, it was impossible to avoid in some way interacting with or benefiting from slavery. The manor lord, Phillips, and the tenant families relied on the forced labor of these enslaved men, women, and children to grow, harvest, and mill wheat, which was eventually shipped down to the West Indies to the sugar plantations to feed the enslaved people that labored under the most brutal conditions on those slave sugar plantations. Sugar's nickname was white gold. It was this wheat for sugar global economy that made the enslavers rich off the intelligence, blood, sweat, and tears of enslaved labor. Everything the tenant family added to the manor lord's property, a house, a barn, stables, fences, animals, plowed meadows, and crops, were considered the equity that belonged to the tenant farmer. So these improvements, built entirely by slave labor, was worth a lot of money. The faster they accrued, the more wealth a tenant farmer could pass on to each subsequent generation. It's only now that we firmly acknowledge the invaluable role of enslaved Africans as colony builders. However, enslaved people were systematically excluded from generated and accumulated wealth of the enslavers, and that includes right here in our community. James Baldwin said that history is not the past, It is the present. We carry our history with us. We are our history. History is written by the victors. So too do our historical documents and monuments. As a result, all of our memories reflect the experiences and perspectives of the landowners and of the enslavers, and not of the enslaved people themselves. Do you know that just about every sign in Irvington running down Main Street is named after a founding father who was an enslaver? We are changing that Euro-ethnic storytelling now. In the not too distant future, come back to Irvington and see the beautiful sculpture by Vinnie Bagwell that will commemorate the cultural and financial contributions of the other founding families of Irvington, the ones who built our community. And we will welcome you. For all those who were lost, for all those who were stolen, for all those who were left behind, for all those who were not forgotten. Thank you.